Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we'll be discussing Journey to Cloud Capability with a Cloud Fit Assessment. My name is Doug Welsby, and I'm the Channel Manager here at Wicresoft. I'm also joined by my colleague, Jose Levy, our Director of Cloud Services. During today's webinar, attendees will be on mute and the line will not be open for questions. However, please feel free to use the GoToWebinar chat feature to submit questions. I will address these questions during the webinar and will respond via email if we do not get to your specific question. If for some reason you get distracted or pulled away from the webinar, no need to worry, as I will be emailing a link to the presentation once it has been posted to our YouTube channel. I will now turn the presentation over to Jose, who will be handling the webinar.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. Thank you, Doug, for the introduction. Today, we're going to begin a two-series webinar, which deals with what we believe to be the quickest way to starting a cloud capability within your organization. Today, we'll be dealing with what we call a Cloud Fit Assessment. And perhaps your organizations have already gone through this or some fashion of a Cloud Fit Assessment, but you'll see why we call it Cloud Fit and why we think it's an important first step for the organization journey to having that cloud capability. So the first thing I just want to introduce Wicresoft and our cloud services. We have built a catalog of advisory solutions and operations offerings that are end-to-end and also can address an organization at any point of their cloud journey. So it doesn't really matter where you are, whether you've started, whether you have some success, whether you have not started at all. It's never too late because as we've talked about in prior sessions, cloud platform as an enabler is a series of waves, and you can literally jump out at any time. Cloud's been, in operation. Cloud platforms have been in operation for 10 years now. So in different fashions, and there's innovation constantly taking place. So you can use any one of our products or services to jump on that wave and benefit from using cloud platform. We really believe that business transformation occurs when you begin to use cloud platforms. Today's session on Cloud Fit and next week's on Cloud Application Portfolio Management are the two solutions within our cloud services and product offering. So from a solution, we mean that we provide both the services, software, and process implementation in order to derive a business outcome in your organization. So just to give you some context, and at a 50,000-foot level, I think all of these are very helpful, especially when we're talking to leadership about the importance of cloud. Some years ago, Satya Nadella, stated how every organization really needs to have a digital services mindset, and whether you are providing products or services, you need to think about how you can, digitize them. There's, in the Microsoft offering and mindset, there's, 4 areas: engaging customers, employees, products, and operations. So in those 4, you could be categorizing and driving initiatives to have more digital services to every one of those stakeholders. I want to also highlight, a recent quote by Andy Jassy, who's the CEO of AWS. What caught my attention was his comment on time to market and how speed is now becoming disproportionately more important to every company. It doesn't really matter what size, stage, or industry. So we also believe that cloud allows you to achieve that speed if done properly. So you have to be prepared and have that readiness internally to take advantage of it. We'll delve into how Cloud Fit actually will get you in better shape to achieve both objectives, digital services at a quicker speed. So as all of you might be currently going through your organizations, the drivers of technology change are increasing at a rapid pace. There's business pressure from your business unit customer requirements. Market competition is accelerating. You have senior leadership teams that mandate driven change. In IT portfolio management, that would be your top 20 projects, pet peeve projects of CXOs. So there's business pressure to change technology. There's organizational structure changes. It could be due to reorienting the organization, M&A spinoffs, restructurings. All of that forces IT to change its services, its applications. The easiest one to take advantage of is technology obsolescence and upgrades. So if you're running applications, infrastructure, there's end of life announcements, upgrades to technology platforms that need to occur. And then finally, legal and regulatory compliance. That drives a lot of change based on requirements in order to avoid penalties or being out of compliance. So all of this forces us to think about how can we accelerate the rate of change and address it. So one way we believe that using cloud capability, you're actually accelerating digital transformation. And I have a very straightforward picture here. It encompasses a number of other disciplines other than cloud, but I thought that bringing it, the topic of digital transformation being so prevalent, this is part of one of the easiest ways of illustrating how cloud can support that. So you'll go through the process of defining application functions, and it depends where you start, whether you start with business architecture, whether you're starting with business unit through all the change drivers that I mentioned earlier. You're going to end up with some services that are going to have to be delivered through an application, and a feature set that's going to have to be delivered through an application. That application, again, depending on its type, and we'll talk about how you define the best types for cloud, has a likelihood that it can be a workload that can be placed on the cloud. And if you have your cloud capability components defined and internally know how to leverage cloud, your ability to meet the need of that customer in that service, those set of features to their customers is going to be accelerated. So everything on the top is really your demand for capability from your customers and from the business. And what we have to do is be ready to address that and see if we can accelerate through the cloud capability components in the bottom. So, here, just for illustrative purposes, you have a series of applications that you're going to end up putting in some cloud component. In this case, I'm just for as an example, I'm showing Dynamics 365 and Azure infrastructure as a service for some of the application components. So remember that cloud can accelerate digital transformation if you develop that cloud capability. So what does cloud capability means? What we think, or what we recommend, is that you start thinking about having those subset of skills in order to take advantage of what's available in the cloud. So, from in a more traditional IT standpoint, and again, this is also representative because your organization could be structured differently, both in terms of its services, and also in terms of its IT capability. But typically you're going to have some architecture, infrastructure, data, security, operations, governance, organization, and business strategy. Now, what typically will happen is that within those roles in an IT organization, you'll have folks that will be pressured to address cloud capability, because as part of their job, again, whether you're talking about information, your data governance, or your security, you're going to have to actually see options on a cloud, whether it's public or private. When you begin, it's going to be probably not that great in terms of the percentage of cloud spend and cloud consumption. So the expertise isn't really going to be there in the beginning. Now, if a cloud capability is developed separately, that's where you actually have folks that have that expertise exclusive to cloud technologies, cloud platforms, and can address it with more speed. So we recommend, again, that you focus on developing that cloud capability by having folks that are exclusive with that skill set. It moves very, very fast. It's very, very domain specific. It's actually accelerating in terms of its evolution. The number of services that are being launched on a weekly basis by the major platforms are very difficult to keep track of. If you have folks that are exclusively focused on cloud capability, you have a better chance of taking advantage of what it offers when you have to deliver services through those platforms. So in the end, what will happen if you develop that cloud capability, you'll end up with a target architecture. And this can be initially, just very informal. In fact, this one is from work that's done by, a Microsoft technology specialist. Again, it's a public blog, so you can go to it and see the approach. We happen to think this is, one of the better practices, where you will end up with a reference architecture, target architecture, after doing multiples of workloads that you're going to end up in the cloud. Again, this is changing very quickly, so the service offering could change what is available to you, but it'll be workload and application specific. So you'll be able to change this as more capabilities put on the cloud by Microsoft Azure and the other vendors. So how do we start? And really here, what we're recommending is that you extract some existing practices that you might be doing and really apply them to cloud only. So the first is Cloud Fit and Cloud Application Portfolio Management Solutions. That's what we offer as part of our cloud services. And really, Cloud Fit is an assessment that evaluates all of your applications, or it could be a subset by business unit. It really depends on the scope. Eventually, you could say that they could be all, and you are evaluating based on a number of assessment factors that are specific to cloud, and determining whether those applications are appropriate to take to the cloud and become a cloud candidate. It's a little different than evaluating a specific workload, because we will do that later in the second part, where we do cloud APM, cloud application portfolio management, otherwise known as application rationalization. But here we're really focusing on developing that cloud portfolio management capability. Again, we want to focus the skill set, we want to focus resources on accelerating what we've identified a cloud candidate to actually take to the cloud. And the roadmaps are slightly different in terms of the technology components that we're going to be managing, because again, they're going to be services versus the services in the cloud from a cloud platform, versus having them internally in our own internal virtualization platform, or other components that we consume. So from Cloud Fit, we're going to go to Cloud application portfolio management, and we believe that this is a cycle that you need to undertake. So, Cloud Fit should be every quarter, again, given the pace of change. And through there, you will have cloud candidates that you will be able to develop business cases. That is more of an assessment type approach once you get into a business case, because you're going to be getting deeper into what it's going to take to actually put the application up on the cloud platform. So these go hand in hand, and today we are talking about Cloud Fit. And next week we're going to be addressing cloud application portfolio management and why that should be separate. So Cloud Fit, and I'm going to use here a generic example. Basically, we're going to inventory all of our applications. That content, that data can come from your CMDB or any other extract source database that you have that has information. If you have an existing tools, existing repositories, EA repository, that's fine also. The idea is we're going to take all of that information and we're going to classify based on a number of assessment factors. I included here one example from a case study that I'm going to talk about in a second, but it's really what makes sense to your organization. There's some basic ones that we recommend, and in this particular example, we tried to be a little comprehensive, but it can they can change depending on what's most important to your organization and how you actually do your enterprise architecture or business architecture. Depending on those approaches. If you don't have any of those developed practices, that's fine also. We have the full catalog of assessment factors that can be used, and it's just a matter of quickly surveying the data that you have and what makes most sense for doing that analysis, which is the second step. We're going to classify every one of those applications based on the assessment factors. And the outcome that we want is some objective scoring out of them so that we can determine what are the cloud candidates. And I just have an example in this slide. And these are more data governance type of outputs, but you have, current cost versus business value. So, again, where should we focus in terms of the business value and what's going to, cost the least or the most in order to derive that business value. Benefits versus cloud migration needs. Again, understanding, complexity and whether we're going to use, the different modes of the cloud for doing the workload migration. Governance, data governance issues could come into play in terms of, data confidentiality and understanding, what is not going to make sense because it's just too mission critical and data is too sensitive to, put in any cloud. That last quadrant is, kind of going away. You will be in a position to put things in a hybrid cloud as listed there, which really means that it's on your internal cloud being run just like if it would in a public cloud on a hybrid basis, and you can determine which components can be in a public cloud and which can be in the private cloud. And in the case of Azure, there's Azure Stack, which allows you to basically run that hybrid cloud just like you would from an Azure admin console on the public cloud, on the Azure public cloud, infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. So if you probably might have done this before, some of your architecture teams might have done this before, but I think the point here is that we're really just looking at the cloud assessment factors. We're not looking at anything else, and we're isolating that analysis in order not to mix the objectivity of the output. There's a lot of other considerations that come into play in an organization, but here is really, is this a good candidate to take to the cloud, and should we put it into a pipeline for analysis and inclusion in a portfolio? So here's another output, we've, in this case, using Power BI. So, we can extract the information, and what we want to do is, again, try to get that strategic value and understand what the score is going to be in order to get our cloud candidates that then we can do further analysis. So if you've gone through and done the classification, the assessment that we said before, then this becomes the output for discussion to determine exactly how it is that we're going to move forward to take workloads to the cloud. So I want to talk about some of the source information that we're showing here came from Microsoft's own case study, and I thought it was really well laid out. They actually presented this; it's public information. It was presented at Ignite 2018, and and their objectives were really to leverage their own capabilities that they're offering to all their corporate customers. So they went through the process of addressing I think it's around a couple of thousand applications they have, and determining where they were going to put those workloads. Were they going to be in the public cloud, or were they going to be their own private cloud? Again, the hybrid scenarios that we talked about. They were determining whether, if it was something commodity, then they were going to use a SaaS application, and obviously in Microsoft's case, they're going after the SaaS platforms, Dynamics or Office 365. If they were going to invest, in other words, they were going to refactor and re-architect applications, they were going to use platform as a service, which is really where a lot of the benefits from transformation come in, because there you are building something at that is built for cloud, and you are leveraging all the capabilities of the platform, rather than just running your current applications on servers on the cloud, which is really infrastructure as a service that's sustained. So those are things that they really are can't really refactor, re-architect. They're probably more legacy applications that are just going to be on the public cloud as infrastructure and nothing else. There's nothing else that can be done against them until they either get retired or you rebuild, transform completely to the cloud, which is another option. So you go through the process. This is how their portfolio distribution ended up, and I think it's somewhat idyllic, because in their particular case, obviously, they can take their on-prem footprint to zero, which is, I it could happen. I mean, they're proving it here, but then again, it's Microsoft, so I guess you could have that for some of the companies that were born in the cloud, but I think it's fairly aggressive in terms of everything that an organization, especially in highly regulated environments where you could actually have zero on-prem, even in your own data center. So I'll include, your own data center as remain on-prem. What you'll see here, and it's kind of a target, is that the 30 to there's 45% here, and the benchmark that we've heard is around 35% is really the target to take the cloud initially. So we've had sessions with customers in which they're saying, well, we're at zero, it's all an internal data center or virtualization internally, and there's some savings to be made in using the different modes and in going through this analysis. So if you're not at that 30 to 35% sweet spot right now, there's probably some low-hanging fruit in terms of your application portfolio that could be in the cloud. So I'll leave that as food for thought for you to consider as you evaluate your applications and opportunities to take to the cloud. So the other important change, and I think this is probably understated, and it's probably the harder one, but it's an overall IT organizational change. So once a move was made in their case, they went kind of orientation towards IT as a service offering. And the example they list is HR. HR, has a number of applications, has an entire value stream, and really IT, after this change to the cloud, obtained the perspective of, how can we look at, HR as a end-to-end process, and how can we address it as a service from an IT standpoint. And, internally that drove a lot of changes, in terms of how they actually, address application changes and address requests from their customers. So, in their particular case, all of their products are right now under a big drive to be developed in an Azure DevOps mode, in an agile mode. So that drove a lot of change internally, because they have to be integrated now with product directly, and not just operating infrastructure. They have to actually be able to release in any Azure DevOps mode, or in a DevOps mode. They're using Azure DevOps because that's their tool. So it's an important consideration, going beyond just leveraging cloud for applications. There's even more value to be obtained by implementing Agile in a DevOps mode. So just important consideration, because it leads to using the cloud can lead to other important changes in your IT organizational design. The other concept, then, Cloud Fit actually originates within enterprise architecture, and these are just some of the areas that you might have to move into after you do your Cloud Fit assessment. In other words, Cloud Fit might actually reveal that there's more work to be done in defining your capabilities. And business mapping, which is more of a business architecture domain, you might have to do more work in terms of your business objects, infrastructure and technical elements, interfaces, the apps. Those are the ones that are going to be exposed more directly as a result of the Cloud Fit assessment, because those are areas that are going to be covered by the cloud platform. And those areas will be addressed. If we do a workload move, we will have to make sure that we incorporate all of those in when we do our architecture design for cloud for a specific workload. But the first three are really important, because they might not be as obvious when you're doing the Cloud Fit, and then you determine that there's misconnections in terms of either applications or capabilities, value streams that aren't addressed. So just to caveat that, again, there might be more work that comes out of the Cloud Fit assessment in order to then do a full move to the cloud for one of those applications. And really, the end goal is to have this cloud capability addressed by your cloud strategy. So the outcomes of Cloud Fit assessment and Cloud APM, which we'll talk about next week, really will allow you to define how are you going to leverage cloud platform within the IT organization. That will lead to a deeper technical assessment of the specific cloud candidates. And again, those are individual efforts. Because of the way that we've evolved, they're not that difficult to actually put together cloud architecture design for a workload. So it's something that can be done actually fairly quickly, days or weeks. All of that information is within the cloud platforms now, and it's fairly easy to map to your technical requirements. If it passes that filter, and again, at this point we would be in a cloud application portfolio management, you're actually going to execute the migration, and it could be migration or initial workload, because you're doing it you're doing an upgrade and it's brand new, rather than just do migration. So that there's also some modes there, but you're actually performing taking that application to the cloud when you do migrate. The work doesn't end there. So after that, security is always primary consideration, and also cloud spend. So we're going to make sure that we maintain, and there's ways of optimizing cloud spend. There's tools available both out of the box by the cloud platforms. Microsoft Azure actually has optimization, Azure Advisor, which has a number of capabilities for you to actually address your analysis of cloud consumption and determine whether you can actually improve on that. And then, from a security standpoint, Azure security is, by far none the best in the market, and continues to evolve in order to make sure that we meet that requirement, depending on how you might be addressing it internally. So you'll go in a cycle, but then once the application is in the cloud, you will always be looking to make it more secure and see if we can optimize the spend, make it easier and cheaper to operate. So with that, we've come to our end. There's some summary recommendations that I want to share. So the first is, we recommend that you initiate a cloud assessment. If you haven't done that, or you've done one partially, do it exclusively with the purpose of using assessment factors only for cloud, and then bring back that analysis for defining which applications right now, because, by the way, this will change as more services come out, are best for taking to the cloud. Then you can put them in through your application portfolio management. The next step after scoring them and defining the applications is building business cases and doing quick technical assessment. Technical assessment will be included within that business case, and if it passes that filter, then we're going to go into cloud application portfolio management, which we're going to address next week.